What did the strange kid in your school do to make them so strange? NSW. Cried when anyone went near him or tried to talk to him. To be fair, it may have been from previous bullying, creating a vicious circle. Plus, red hair and freckles. That's really sad. He'd constructed his own religion around bionicles and would hiss at anyone that tried to talk to him. He also wore this heavy blue windbreaker year round, even when it was blistering hot. I think he was actually really lonely and just wanted to seem different for attention. I tried talking to him once. He hissed at me. He pierced his nipples in the middle of math. He would have conversations with himself under his breath like Gollum. In the middle of one of these rage-filled arguments, he would pull out his handgun and shoot people in the class. All our teachers ever said was, "Hey, no guns." He also made notes that we would occasionally find, one specifically on why the person who sat behind him in math deserved to die, but then he found Facebook and other online communities and calmed down a bit. All our teachers ever said was, "Hey, no guns." Bro, my 4-year-old made a laser gun from Legos and we had to have a meeting about it. Someone walked in on him sucking on a doorknob. He was quiet and, because he didn't speak much English, I assume he was struggling with some sexuality issues. But getting caught sucking on a doorknob in middle school is just devastating in the strange kid rumor mill. Remember, licking doorknobs is illegal on other planets. SpongeBob SquarePants. 1. Got a giant dragon tattoo on his back when he was 15. 2. Always ran around at full speed, hunched over, like he was a character in Naruto. 3. Parkour over everything imaginable. Not 100% on this, but I think he was a ninja. When I was in junior high, there was a guy who could recite the weather forecast for each of the next 5 days. Clever kids that we called him the weatherman. That was decades before the net iPhone, so was actually kind of handy. Would consume their juice boxes by spraying the juice on his shirt and sucking the juice out of his shirt in high school. I find this much weirder than masturbating stories. Oh, how the internet has ruined me. I went to the weird high school, so there are a lot, but my personal favorite was the jetpack kid. He was a freshman when I was a senior, and no matter where he was going, he was running, flat out, with his hands in fists and his arms tucked under his backpack, like they were the nozzles for his jetpack. Please tell me he made sound effects. He had cat ears glued into his hair and sat on the ground like Gollum, holding pieces of bread up to his face and nibbling on it like a cat. He seemed really startled when I invited him to sit with us and spoke quietly. Didn't see him in our area after that much. It was really nice of you to invite him to sit with you. I was one of the weird kids in school, and someone doing that for me would have meant the world, despite how shy I might have seemed. Good on you. She would always have conversations with herself during class, often while the teacher was speaking. One day she showed up and had shaved the front of her hair so that it looked like she had a horrible receding hairline. After a couple of weeks like that, she took to wearing Halloween wigs. She'd sometimes talk about her pet flying squirrel and nobody believed she actually had one, so she started trying to take him to school with her every so often and always get into trouble. During lunch she would sit by herself at a table, pick a person out and literally mimic their every move for the entire lunch period. Very bizarre. Take a dump in his backpack in the middle of math class. He tried to kill a classmate with a screwdriver. He also stuck cinnamon Tic Tacs up his own nose. I can still hear the screaming. The kid's name was Jared. He also told us after he peed himself that he did it because it was warm. He rolled in mud puddles off him. Jared liked to eat pencils, not just the erasers, the whole thing. Went to high school with a kid that hung a dead possum from the top of a door jamb in a busy hallway. He then was expelled and arrested for making bomb threats to the school. We had a kid throw snake blood all over a bunch of people's cars. Then he brought the dead snake into class and hit some girl with it. He didn't shower and loved to smack guys on the ass. Sexual harassments from a stinky 8th grader is the best. Slap ass. Crap his pants and is constantly caught watching guys shower in the locker room. He blew his nose into his sock, then put it back on his foot before getting off the bus. She hissed like a cat, scratched other students, and called the teacher's master. Someone needs to lay off the anime. Wore historically accurate British Royal Navy uniforms around campus a few days a week. He was a really nice guy and very knowledgeable about history, pretty eccentric though. I'd like to think he ended up becoming a history professor at some major university who dresses up for every period of history he covers. Girl at my high school drove a hearse. She was goth. Her brother was caught with a death list and was expelled. In first grade the teacher took back our fat beginner pencils and handed out our first big kid pencils, the thin yellow ones with an eraser on the end. We felt so grown up as we carefully stowed our new treasures in our desks and went out for recess. And weird Kevin snuck back inside and ate the erasers off each and every one of our new pencils. Mother trucker. There was a kid who drove to each classroom in high school. He would make the noises, throw it in reverse to avoid hallway traffic, and slam the brakes to pick up girls and drive them to class. He had his favorite girls and he would buy them new cars and ask them how they liked the interior new car smell, etc. on their drive to class. Side note, he had breath like that SpongeBob episode where the green fog leaked out of his mouth every time he opened it. This was all inside my high school. It was a closed campus. The dude really liked cars. Told everyone his name was Soul Reaper. He was the self-proclaimed gangster emperor and a vampire. He would run around with his forearm over his face, like he was shielding himself from the sun with a pretend cape, hide in the shade and hiss at people as they walked by. Sometimes he would charge them when he hissed and chase them away. If they didn't run, he would do his little cape thing and flee back to the shadows. 1. He snorted bird crap off of a car in the high school parking lot for $5. 2. He got caught jerking it in the woodshop closet. He allegedly used to create fake social media accounts to get guys to send him dong pics. Honestly, that's probably half of the F4M posts on Reddit. Had this one kid that would eat dried leaves and thought a certain wall was his girlfriend. Tell him to stay away from my girl. While on a school sports trip, we stopped at a Denny's for lunch. He sat at a table by himself and shouted at the waitress to get me another Coke, like 3 times. He ate his burger so fast that it got stuck in his throat, I think. No biggie, he just pushed it down his throat with his fork, to the horror of the other nearby diners. That's just one example. Scratch his head until he had a pile of dandruff mounted on his desk, then blow it everywhere. This one kid was really into the whole furry culture. He wore a dog collar and constantly drew pictures of anthropomorphic animals with huge breasts. He was also one of those people who pathologically lie. If you're furry, I mean that's great and all, but being out and proud about it just got him eaten alive in high school. We had a whole pack of them. At lunch they'd all get together and howl. One would burst into some sort of dog-like yodel, and then they'd all pick it up. There was a Chinese kid in my class who used to run around shouting, "Itchy dicky," and try to come up behind you, put his hand between your legs and, well, scratch your dong. Didn't win him many fans. Straight up whip it out and start jacking it in class. Clasturbation. It's actually kind of impressive how some people have absolutely no shame. Dang it, I'm too late for this one, but a girl I went to school with would constantly be trying to turn into a Super Saiyan. People would walk by and say, "Power up Christy," and she would start screaming and trying to charge up. I always thought it was kind of fricked up and not funny though. You fools. This isn't even my final form. Ate spider legs and occasionally drank whiteout during math class. I mixed my drinks together. Milk, juice, Pepsi, whatever. Then I drank it. He spoke like an old Timmy fisherman. He also played the accordion and the harmonica. He said he lived on a boat, but I think he just loved the idea of it. He grew long 1800s style sideburns and wore a sailor's cap to school. He also spoke in a weird oldie English type of way. It's always good to see someone dedicated to a role, even if they're the only ones watching. They were obsessed with the chipmunks, like Alvin, Simon and the other one. On all of her papers she drew the 3 of them. She would sing the chipmunk song and use that super high-pitched voice to do it. She eventually started peeing on kids and got expelled. He was just always really dirty and unkempt. Didn't realize until later that his family was just very, very poor. Felt bad for thinking of and treating that kid like he was strange ever since. Usually a lot of the kids like this come from broken or poor families. We may see them as weird, but they're just trying to cope with what they've had to live with. He'd sit at the lunch table staring at his water bottle. When you asked him what he was doing, he'd say, "I'm trying to move this bottle with my mind." I was nice to him, you know, just in case. Yeah, you wouldn't want to get hit by a floating water bottle. He tapped me on the shoulder during recess one day and opened his hand to show me about 4 or 5 rocks. He then put his hand up to his mouth, deposited the rocks, and then swallowed them. He gave me a crazed smile, then ran away without saying a word. First grade me was horrified. Combined all of his lunch food into a single pile, ate it like a miner looking for valuable ore, while using every condiment the school provided. Can never forget one time he added corn, green beans, hot sauce, mayo, mustard, relish and a roll. It's been 20 years or so, I may not be accurate, to his pizza. Just started gobbling away, like every other day that ends in Y. I happen to be looking right at him, see him pause, stare straight ahead, not at me, just into nowhere, for an awkward 5 seconds, leans over and pukes all over the walkway between tables. He sits right back up, with the same awkwardness as before. He continues staring into space. Just as the janitor arrives to spread wood dust, or whatever it is, on the puke, the kid starts eating the amassed pile of food he has collected again. The janitor's face while he cleaned the puke, right next to the kid who puked it up. I always remember. It clearly and non-verbally said, "This kid has some serious issues." The kid continued to eat the amalgamation of food and stare into space as the janitor just cleaned it up, clearly thinking he was not paid enough to do this crap. They never are. When I was in 7th grade there was a kid whose last name was Rocher, and since he invariably smelled like pungent cat pee, he was called the Roach and teased constantly by most kids at my school. I never spoke to him until I shared a summer school class with him, and he was assigned to me as a partner for a project. After getting to know him better, I realized he was perfectly normal. He liked video games and TV shows, his only immediately noticeable flaw being his terrible stench. About a week before our presentation was due, he's not in his seat in class. The teacher informs us he drowned in a canal over the weekend. I was shocked, mainly because I had seen him just a few days earlier. I felt especially horrible when kids I knew started joking about how he finally took a bath. I lost a couple friends for yelling at them about how they were awful people and how he was a nice guy. My only regret is that I hadn't spoke to him sooner. He could have used a friend during the short time he was here. R.I.P. Andrew Rocher. Went to elementary with a boy who would masturbate under his desk, at least twice a week. He barely hid it. Everyone knew it. Usually the teacher would try to ignore it, but she often sent him out of the room. He also talked to himself a lot. He was a really smart kid, grew up to be brilliant, but you always had to worry if he was plotting your death under his breath. In high school there was a girl who wore adult diapers, not for any legit incontinence. She just liked crapping herself. She almost never spoke, but she told people that she wore them on purpose for that reason. I won't say he is strange cause he is mentally disabled. Dude ripped his eyeball out. Stabbed another kid through the hand with a compass. The drafting kind. Not hey that way is north kind. Sucker got blood on my NKOTB shirt. He also legit thought he was a Power Ranger. We had a kid back in my high school that lied to everyone that he got the part of Anakin Skywalker for episode 2. He would skip weeks of school to prove that he was on set and walked us through the kissing scene with Natalie Portman. All in all, he missed almost an entire semester's worth of days in a single year just to prove a point. Here's the strangest part of the lie. He continued the ruse for months long after it was announced that Hayden Christensen was playing Anakin and we saw the first teaser trailers. He crap in the middle of the hallway in between class periods. Congratulations, you have been visited by the Danny DeVito Dorito. Comment your dream and it will come true. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.